Hello everyone, welcome back to a continuation of this video series on the historical criticism of Islam. And last time we talked about the problem of the sources, meaning the sources that allegedly support the existence of something called the Standard Islamic Narrative. Today we're going to continue with that theme, which is the problem with sources, and we talk about the witnesses, and we want to see when did these witnesses live? With me here in studio to answer that question is our dear brother, Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for
So what are we going to say about these witnesses for the sources or the early Islamic narrative, technically speaking?
Yeah, we're going to put it on a timeline, but before we do that, I want to look at a slide. I want to look at the slide of a map. So let's take a look at this map here. This is the area we're interested in. What am I talking about? Well, let's just look at Muhammad's empire. So there's Muhammad's empire, the brown area. That was the part of that is really what we want to talk about. We want to talk about that brown area. This is the Hijaz that is primarily in those two cities. You can see Mecca and Medina there. That's where it all takes place. And his empire, by the time he died in 632, remember the caliphate comes into creation in 624. 2 years after he moves to Medina, he introduces the caliphate. So from 624 up until 632, the last 8 years of his life, that brown area was conquered. But after he dies in 632, then you have Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, known as the Rashidun period. So 632 to 661, the next 30 years, is when you have these, what we call the four rightly guided caliphs. Abu Bakr, 632 to 634, Umar, 634 to 644, Uthman, 644 to 656, and then Ali, 656 to 661, when then Muawiyah comes over and he destroys and kills Ali at the Battle of Siffin, and then introduces the Umayyad Caliphates. But I'm not interested in, really I'm only interested in that period up to 661. So let's look at the map again. That's the Rashidun period that we're going to introduce as well. Now, after that, then comes the Umayyad period, and that is in purple there. See the purple there? That is when Muawiyah introduces the Umayyad period, which continues right up until the Abbasids take over around 750. So basically a 100 years period that. But we really want to look at the brown area and the orange area. That's the area where everything happened. That's the area where all Islam began, where Muhammad lived, where the Quran was revealed, where Mecca existed, and the people called Muslims also lived and flourished. Okay? To do that, everything we know about that area, everything we know about this, if you look here, this brown and the orange area that we're looking at, if that takes, everything that we want to zero in on should have been written down almost immediately, right?
You would think.
And we've said that. This is the problem. We would want people who were there. We would want people who lived in that area. We would want in this area here. We would want people who actually knew Muhammad, saw what he did, heard what he said, to have written down so specifically, because the Standard Islamic Narrative assumes that. You assumed it when you were growing up. I assumed it my whole time that I was studying Islam. But this is what we need to look at. So let's look at the next slide, because the next slide then shows us the problem. So let's start. This is a timeline, and this is what Muslims haven't done. This is what I wasn't shown, and you need to see this. Everybody needs to see this. So according to the Standard Islamic Narrative, and this is their story, this is what everybody's known. Muhammad was born in 570. He then, he's there in Mecca. He was born in Mecca. He starts receiving his revelation in 610. There in the Hira cave, according to the Standard Islamic Narrative. This is not my story. This is the Standard Islamic Narrative story. This is the traditions. This is the historical account according to Islam. And then in 621, he is asked to get up and go on the back of the winged horse called the Burak to fly up from Mecca up to Jerusalem, where he then ascends the seven heavens to receive the five prayers. Comes back down, that's known as the Mi'raj. And that happens in 621. In 622, then, he then moves from Mecca to Medina, known as the Hijra, and that's where he starts really introduces himself as the arbiter between man and God, introduces the Constitution of Medina, has that problem with the Jews, and destroys and eradicates all the Jews starts to eradicate all the Jews. And then in 630, he then comes and he conquers Mecca without firing a shot. He just takes over Mecca. And then he dies in 632. And so that is Muhammad's life. Now, I'm just giving you the bare bones. I'm just giving an overview because we just don't have time to unpack it more than that. But that's everything you've been told, right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so you've known this. This is nothing new. Everything I've seen, you have assumed is correct.
And any Muslim, whether East or West, when they go and read the Islamic sources, these are the events and dates that will be mentioned to them.
Okay. After him comes Abu Bakr, and he's from 632 to 634. He dies peacefully. Nothing much happens. There is expansion of the borders under his. But really, it's Umar where much of the expansion takes place, where they start pushing out, going across North Africa, going across to the east, what is today Iraq and Iran, all the way up to Afghanistan. That's where the borders are really been pushed, and the empire really takes shape. That happens in that 10-year period. He is killed, and of course, Uthman then takes over. And so Uthman taking over, it is he that is responsible for the compilation of the Quran in 652. The Quran that we have in our hands today is his. He then is killed in 656, very violent area, part-time of the world, and then Ali takes over. And Ali only lasts for about 5 years before he is killed at the Battle of Siffin. So this is the Standard Islamic Narrative. That's their story. Everything you've seen on this graph, on this timeline, you have been told were written down by people who knew him, who were there, who participated with him, who understood this or actually knew these caliphs, or were written by those who were in the courts of these caliphs, right? That's what you've been told. That's what I've been told. That's what I have assumed. Here's the problem. Let's look at this next graph. Islam was fully formed in Hijaz by 661, right? So, how do we know all of the above is correct, and where did it come from? Well, let's go right to the next graph, because this is what we have not been told. This is what I was not told until I was studying under Gerald Haunting. It was Gerald Haunting that actually introduces to me in 1994. Okay, let's go back to the graph, and here you see. So Muhammad dies in 632, we're told. Then we are given his biography. Everything we know about Muhammad, everything about what he did, where he went, what he said, all these things that we know about his life, we are told are written by this man, Ibn Ishaq. You've been told that. I've been told that. That's the CIRA. Mm-hmm. The problem is, nothing was written by Ibn Ishaq. We have nothing from him. Not a thing. No book, no manuscript, not even a fragment. We have everything from this guy here, Ibn Hisham. Mm-hmm. And this guy dies in 833. Ibn Ishaq dies in 765. So we're talking about roughly, 70 years later that we finally get his material. Now, Ibn Hisham does admit that he takes something of Ibn Ishaq and throws the rest away. So let's just get rid of Ibn Ishaq, because he really doesn't really figure into this whole narrative. It's Ibn Hisham we should go to, or Al-Waqidi. That's another name we should put up there, because they are the two that write and compile the life of Muhammad.
Right. One talked about his life in general. Al-Waqidi focused on his campaigns.
His campaigns. And these are military campaigns.
Right.
These are very violent, especially between 624 and 632, the last 8 years of his life. But that's not all. In fact, most Muslims, when you talk about it, when you were a Muslim, to know what you were to do, you didn't really go to the CIRA. You went to the Hadith, didn't you?
I mean, usually, because it's much easily accessible. Believe it or not, that a whole lot of Muslims go and invest the time to read all of the CIRA of Ibn Hisham.
But it's the Hadith that tell you how to walk, talk, eat, drink, sleep. Everything you're to do.
That's true.
24/7 is from the Hadith. So if you look up on the timeline there, I've got the Hadith in blue, okay? So when were they written down? Because they are much more comprehensive. They are more important for Muslims, because that is how they're to live. They're to follow what Muhammad said. So who is the first one to write the Hadith down? Now,
well, we know of Bukhari.
Okay, and you've always assumed Bukhari was there with Muhammad to know what he said, right?
Well, I mean, either there with Muhammad, or at least I assume that the people who reported to him somehow were connected to Muhammad, or there's eyewitnesses, technically speaking.
Okay, well, look at where Muhammad died. These are all death dates, by the way. Just so everybody knows, I always put the death date, because that's how we do it in academia. You always put the day he died. Now, that means that he did not write everything on the day he died, or the year he died, probably in the earliest 20 years before he died. But the reason we put the death date, because that would be the last revision. That would be the last canon of his writings. Could not be after that. It would have to be either 870 or previous 25 years before that.
So let people look 240 years.
Okay, we're getting to that. Hold on, Your Honor, you're
I'm
jumping
just
the
trying
gun.
to point people.
Hold on, we're going to get to that.
This is, well, I'm
Just put the
interacting
dates
here
down.
with the data, right?
Good man. Good man.
Yeah.
It's not just Al-Bukhari we know. We also have Sahih Muslim writes another hadith. We also have Al-Tirmidhi. We also have Ibn Majah. We also have Abu Dawud. And we have An-Nasai. These are the 6 authoritative hadith.
For the Sunnis.
For the Sunnis, not for the Shiites, for the Sunnis. And remember, Sunnis make up 90%. So the majority of Muslims look at these dates, look at these individuals, look at this material. This is the hadith right here. Okay? So that is absolutely sacrosanct. But look at that. We're going to get to the dates now. I just want to put them up there in the timeline. There's still 2 more genres that we need to look at. One is the tafsir and the other is the tahrikh.
We might want to do that in the next part.
Okay, we'll do that in the next part because I just want to point them up there. That's Al-Tabari. All right? Let's then come back and let's unpack what you were trying to get at because that is highly important.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say here for everyone. I mean, Jay is not just putting dates just for the sake of showing you dates. If that's the case, I mean, we're back again to square one, which is we're agreeing with the standard Islamic narrative dates. No, we're putting the dates here to show you the gap, the lack of physical eyewitness that could be collaborated with these dates. And this is why it's problematic. This is why it's damaging. And as we continue in this series, you'll see also the lack of sources to back up these things, the lack of tangible evidence, manuscript evidence, and many other things that could collaborate, support the standard Islamic narrative. So that's why we're calling it the problem with the sources. Until next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel CIRA International and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.